Welcome to Pucknology After Dark. Well, with that Sharks win, they snap a 10-year losing streak in Buffalo. I am joined by hosts Ian Reed and Chris JWS. If you would like to be a part of the show, please tweet at any of our handles using the hashtag Pucknology After Dark. We'd love to have any of your guys' questions. We also will have the chat running as well, so you can use that. So welcome, gentlemen. What did you guys think of the game so far? Or tonight, excuse me.
I'll start off. I thought it was good for the second half of a back-to-back. They didn't build on their lead when they got it, but for what it was for in Buffalo on the road in a back-to-back, I was reasonably satisfied with the effort, and I thought at the end there they did step it up a bit right before the end of the period, and then in overtime they started attacking more. So for what it was, I think it was good, and they really needed to get bank some points early on the road trip, so there's less pressure later on.
Yeah, definitely. Ian, what were your thoughts on the game?
Yeah, I think all in all, it was a decent effort by the team. I thought that there was stretches of the game where I thought that they could have applied a little bit more pressure. I thought they may have let Buffalo hang around for too long. But Jones made saves when he needed to make saves. I don't really hang him out to dry on that one goal there. I thought he kind of got hung out. So it's a win. A win's a win. At this time, I'll take them any way we can get them.
Well, it's kind of funny because I said we would win the back-to-back games, and here we go. We won the back-to-back. Now, let's just hope the second half of my prediction doesn't come true where they lose the next 4 games. But anyways, we've got at Randall, actually at Honor joining us tonight. Randall, what did you think of the game?
So I watched the first two periods, and I was driving for the entire third period in overtime. And Dan Ruzanowski gets really excited a lot. Some plays like that might, he kind of like you think it's a really big scoring chance where it might be like a missed opportunity to almost, but it makes it a lot more fun. But it kept me really like I felt like I was on the edge of my seat the entire third period, and then in overtime when Marleau scored, I don't know it was a big goal. I don't know. It just had like almost an emotional feel for it to me. Like all these rumors are out him, and like he's been a Shark for 18 years. Like there's nobody in our franchise history like him. And no matter all the crap talking JR calls about, he goes and scores the next game. Like all this talk, and he ends up scoring the game-winning goal in overtime where we've only won once before in our entire franchise history. Like it's the 25th year anniversary, and we're talking about trading him. Like the entire car ride, I was thinking Marleau for Josh Georges sounds amazing. I would love Josh Georges on the Sharks, but you can't trade this guy. There's no way. Like the scoring that we have right now isn't even good enough to compete every night. So why trade one of our best scorers?
True. No, I totally agree, and it's not. He comes in flashes. I mean, and at this point in his career, I think that's all we can expect. But he does have a knack for scoring some big goals. And that last play on the 3-on-3, you basically have Hurdle driving, gets the puck over, get a shot on goal, and then you get Marleau to come get it in when Johnson's laying in the paint. So it was just an awesome goal, awesome 3-on-3, a lot of movement, a lot of back and forth. Definitely a little bit different than we saw the first 3-on-3 that the Sharks played. So yeah, overall I thought it was a very good overtime, and it was a good game for a back-to-back. There was some drop-off. You did see it in the second period, and that was kind of to be expected. But for what it was, hey, you got 4 points out of 4 points. Can't beat that.
Yeah, that 3-on-3 overtime's awesome. It's awesome.
I agree. And they basically played Buffalo to a draw in almost every way in terms of shots, in terms of most of the stats are pretty even. And on the second half of back-to-back, Buffalo isn't as bad as they've been in previous years. They were like right around 500 this year. And Sharks are saying we should beat this team, but the Buffalo's saying the exact same thing. So play them to a draw in the second half of a back-to-back. I think that is a good step forward for the Sharks. Even if like to be prettier, like to be better, but without Logan Couture, I think that it was needed. They really needed that.
Yeah, yeah, and it's a 2-game winning streak, which is good. You can start building off of this. I guess my first question to the panel is, what did you guys think of the decision to go with Martin Jones on the second night of a back-to-back, playing him again? Ian.
I didn't really have an issue with it because Stalock has been subbed in for so many games. It's not like Jones has started, 5 games in a row and then you play him on a back-to-back. He's been pulled from games. Stalock's, started a game on his own. So I think, based on how he played in Detroit last night, he earned the extra start, and I thought that he definitely earned his next start as well.
Randall?
Yeah, so the Sharks, I think, really looked at this game as one of the biggest games that they've played in the season going forward. They hadn't won 2 in a row since the New Jersey win. And every time they've won, they've lost right after that. Didn't matter if they played well against Florida, they were losing 1-0 to Anaheim the next home game. They wanted to win this game big just so they can get 2 back-to-back. And they, I feel like they outplayed Buffalo for most of that game. And to be able to do that to a team that didn't play last night and to go to overtime, it was good to see that energy. But Jones, Stalock hasn't shown anything to put him in a game where we are confident that our goalie is going to play well that night. And Jones can play it. He can play it. He's young. Goalies. Corey Schneider played 68 games a couple years ago. 55 games for a goalie, 60. That's not that bad.
No. I think the only thing that I think this panel necessarily thinks is that he hasn't played a full season, and so overworking him might come back to bite you a little bit later on. But I totally agree.
He's done it though in his career before.
Yeah, no, he's definitely shown that he can carry a workload. Yeah. But he hasn't played a full 82 game schedule. Hasn't played more than a backup's amount worth of games. So this is really the first time he's getting that opportunity to play 50-plus games.
I think it might be more of a non-confidence in Stalock rather than let's see if we can push Jones a little bit. I think that they're just not confident with Stalock in the net that they have a better chance to win the game that night.
I was actually thinking the other way around. I was thinking more as a vote of confidence in Jones, because keep in mind the way things are going to work probably with free agency, I don't see it likely Stalock stays here. So no. Jones is the guy that's going to be here, and Jones is the guy that you need to make sure he knows that you have faith in him, and that's what my thought was. Is maybe it was trying to make sure he's got that he knows that the Sharks have they're going to ride through the he's had some stormy starts. I felt like it was more of a vote of confidence. I was surprised. I figured Stalock was going to go in today. So.
No, I agree with you, Chris. I think that's a good point. I think that we also saw Stalock pick it up in the last few games. He did let in that bad goal against the Islanders, but he did play well. And I just think that with him having such a good bounce-back game against Detroit, I think they were just like, okay, let's give him a little bit more of a confidence boost and let him go in. He had a .968 save percentage tonight, which was stellar. Made some really good saves. Saved the game in the third period where he just, saved that wicked bounce that Pavelski had go off the tip of his stick going back into the goal, and that could have sealed the game. We've seen Sharks games go that way, where you had an own tip into the goal, and that's the game. So, he did a really good job, I thought.
Eichel was pretty quiet until the end of the game as well. He wasn't involved in too many plays until the last couple of minutes, and I think that's a good sign too. He's their biggest offensive threat, I would say.
Yeah, no, I agree. And you saw the Sharks be pretty physical against a smaller Buffalo team, which was, it was interesting that they played that physical style in the second game of a back-to-back. Normally you see the physical push in the first game and then kind of a notch back in the second game because you're a little tired, but it was kind of a bit of a role reversal. You saw.
I don't think they were initiating that. I think Buffalo is a physical team, and they go out and do that every night. I mean, Jurgensen, he goes out there and he puts body on. He plays the body every shift. I mean, he's fast too. I mean, he's a real good player.
Well,
But I
Tommy
think the
Wingles.
Sharks.
Tommy Wingles took
Well, yeah,
exception
I mean,
to that because he lit him up.
Well, in the first period, once they saw that they were going to be in a little bit rougher of a game than they're used to, I mean, I think then these guys, they know when they have to step it up. But, if they don't have to play that game every night when they're playing 82 in a season, they're not going to have to because that goes into effect also. They think about that.
True. So with that win, the Sharks now get back into a playoff spot. They're in the second wild card. They leapfrog Winnipeg, who lost tonight. They have the same amount of rows for you, Generation X-Wing. They have the same amount of rows, and they actually own the tiebreaker in points differential now with a +2. So that is good to see the Sharks bouncing back quite nicely. So they're getting a little bit more puck support, a little bit more puck luck, making that luck, which is the important thing for me. They're not relying on the bounces to go their way. They're actually, in my opinion, really trying to make those bounces for themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, going back to what Randall said about the physicality, I thought earlier on in the game, I thought that you really kind of saw how Buffalo likes to kind of push the play. You saw a lot of times, or even Burns kind of got just plowed through one trying to take the puck out of the zone, and Buffalo would just crash through the zone and take the puck. And I thought that as the game went on, they started to adjust better for it. But yeah, that Buffalo, they were just getting kind of pushed around, I thought, early on in the game.
The Sharks have never been a team to really initiate physicality in a game. I mean, they will in a situation where, in prior games, like in a Vancouver, LA, for instance, where Joe will drop the gloves right at the beginning of a game. But, we usually take the brunt end of a lot of physicality, and sometimes it takes something happening to one of our players or there being an incident. But, we've never been the team to really go out and do something like that. We've had the rare occasion of like a Brian Marchment or Scott Parker or like even a Rafi Torres, but it's not like a team going out there and like LA, that one series where they were just hitting all of our guys from behind into the boards. Dustin Brown's taking guys' knees out. Like, there's players that are intending to injure.
Yeah.
I mean, we've never had that style. And so I think in those situations, we just try to hold our own. But we have guys, that when they have to throw it around, they can do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's usually they let other teams dictate to them sometimes. I think the best thing, though, is when they stay above that. Because when they start getting into that too much, that's usually when the other teams win. And
Playing the other team's game.
They got to dictate to the other team, and I think they did a good job with Buffalo tonight. You got to match some of it because you can't just get pushed around. But yeah, I think they did a good job of matching it, but not not getting caught up in little squabbles between the whistle and stuff. Because when you get baited into that, they get off focus, they start getting off. So kind of circling here back to Martin Jones. Eric is putting up a graphic I just sent him. So just how good was he tonight? So from Hockey Stats CA here. Can you display that, Eric?
Yep, it's up.
Okay. I wasn't sure it was on the live feed, but you can see right there, Buffalo shots on the left side, Shark shots on the right side. Buffalo was living right in front of the goal tonight. Like, look at all that black. So Martin Jones was outstanding tonight. Like, he wasn't just very good. He saved their bacon. Like, he's a big reason why they won on the back-to-back, and yeah, I just make sure to give him all the credit he's due, because a lot of guys stepped up tonight, but yeah, he was the biggest reason why they were able to win.
And
if you take a look at this graphic, it's kind of interesting where the Sharks shooting and where they were kind of living. They're a little bit outside of the slot, which I don't particularly like. You've got a little bit of a distribution, maybe 10, 15 feet out in front of the net, but what's kind of disturbing is more of the shots are either on the left-hand side of the circle or they're above the circle, above the hash marks.
Well, so the shots that are coming from above the top of the circles, in most cases, that might be a power play formation. That could be guys screening in front to get a tip, because most of those shots that are coming right in the middle of the slot, there's not going to be a guy going for a tip there. Yeah, there might be a guy screening the goalie and just trying to push his body around out there, but the shots that are mostly deflected and that go on net are the shots that come from above the circle or at the blue line, usually on a power play or right off the draw, and the centerman wins the puck back to the defenseman. So I don't think that's a negative thing there. But yeah, I mean, Buffalo has all those shots in there, so it's like a big difference. But the fact that we're getting shots in more parts of the ice is better. That shows that our defensemen have more versatility than, they didn't have any shots from the point there.
Well,
Yeah, that was just scoring opportunities right there. So if you ever look at Hockey Stats CA, they actually have a chart. You can actually like select, if you want to look at scoring opportunities or all shots. And if I didn't send it to Eric, but if you look at the Sharks shots over, all shots, theirs is really well distributed around the entire ice, whereas Buffalo is very like that was their main thing, is they were working in the slot a lot, which good on them in some ways. In other ways, it is good to be versatile and be able to be firing from every part of the ice. That is one of the gripes we've always had about the Sharks. They'll pass. They aren't just firing shots and trying to get them onto the net.
Shoot the puck.
Yeah, that guy in the audience.
20.
Well, no, but that also brings up a good point. Today, when I was watching the game, I saw Patrick Marleau pass up a perfectly good opportunity to shoot on net, and what's he do? He does a drop pass, and I think that these drop passes and these lack of wanting to get the puck on the net is really kind of what has bothered me for a while, and it's kind of just them reverting back to a style that they want to play. And to me, in this kind of a game, when you're playing a good North-South team, it's just not effective. When you're playing against Detroit, where there's a lot of creativity, and I'm talking older Detroit, where Pavel Datsyuk and Henrik Zetterberg were in their prime, and you have a little bit of East-West play, it's good to have those kinds of plays because you can spread the defense out a little bit and get a good shot on. But when you're playing a North-South team who just collapse on net, it's better to get that shot off quicker than it is to try and get a shot that they want to try and get through, where you'll take a couple extra seconds to get down and block the shot. So I guess overall the game was fairly good for the back-to-back, and I think that the overtime they played pretty well. With that being said, we've got a couple tweets. One from Slushy Jake, who's always seems to be on the Twitterverse. He's saying, do you guys think that not having a loss in the OT shootout yet is weird or not?
We've only been in, 2 overtime games?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the second overtime game. The other one was the Devils, where they won the shootout.
Yeah, we'll end up getting like 5 or 6 games in a row at some point. It'll happen. I mean, we'll probably get between 8 to 10 overtimes. I mean, I don't want it to go to shootout. I mean, it's way more interesting 3-on-3, and that's the goal, to not have to go to shootout, because teams that have lost their seasons to shootouts, and just like your team, I don't know, just the shootout's kind of weird, but the fact that it still comes down to that is at least cool. They didn't completely take it out, but this 3-on-3 is great. I think it's creating so much electricity, so much more goals. We're actually expecting goals in overtime where we've never really done that before, unless there's a power play.
I don't know if I call it weird. I mean, it did feel a little strange, though. And I was like, how many times have we been in overtime? Like, I was looking it up right before the period started, and I was like, how many times have we been in overtime this year? Because I was trying to remember if we'd been in it at all. And then I remember there was the Devils game, and that was it. I was like, yeah, normally by now we would have been involved in several overtime. So it's I don't know about weird. It does feel a little unusual, because, yeah, usually, like, especially, like, usually when the Sharks have their slides, like, their slides almost always start, first they're winning a lot, and then they go to overtime when they should, and then they have another game they'll lose in overtime, then they just start losing outright. That's usually how those slides go. So now there's only the one.
You have to see how many games they lost by 1 goal or how many games they won by 1 goal. I mean, I don't know how many there is this season. Like, I don't think that very many of our losses were by 1 goals this season. I mean, there may be a few, but I think most of our games it was like a 2 or 3 goal difference. Empty nets, that can change because the teams are more they're more relaxed with pulling their goalie now with 2 minutes remaining if they can. It didn't used to be like that, but teams are more willing to do that now and pulling their goalie when they're down by 2 also.
Yeah. So the Sharks power play finally gets off the schneid, which was good.
With Vlasic, nonetheless.
With Vlasic, nonetheless, and me and Ian were kind of tweeting back and forth, the apocalypse is coming, and yeah, I agree. He hadn't scored since 2010, so you're talking a 5-year drought on the power play. That first power play where they scored looked pretty good. I like the movement. The second power play they drew, however, was not good. They were giving up way too many chances for a team that's on the power play. They were giving up way too many chances in their own end. It looked like they couldn't move the puck out of their own end. That power play at the end, though, looked very good, where Burns got in all alone. He gets basically gets it off of Johnson's underneath underarm padding, and it hits off the crossbar, and yeah, Chester Chivo talking to me saying, "Hey, when do we get those inward facing goalposts, anyways?" But no, it was good to see. It was good to see that first and that last power play. Definitely looking a lot better. But boy, when they're not all clicking on the same page, these penalty kills are so good now. They're going to go the other way, and you better get your head out of your butts quick.
It feels like sometimes they exhale when they get a power play opportunity. It's like, okay, this is kind of easy going right now, so we'll go ahead and we can pass the puck around to whoever we want, and not thinking like they're going to have the other team. The other team's going to be aggressive and start attacking them. It feels like sometimes they just let this deep breath out and think like, okay, relax, it's cool. Like I don't know, the intensity sometimes just doesn't seem to be there, or sense of urgency or whatever you prefer to call it.
No, I think I know what you're talking about. Ian, what did you think about the power play?
Yeah, I mean, kind of just going off of what Chris was saying, you got, it just seems like the intensity drops when they're on the power play. They try to force a lot of passes, and they still try to be too pretty. I remember, like, I don't know if it was last year or the year before when T-Mac called the power play Globetrotterous, and I kind of think that kind of still holds true today. Like, they just, sometimes it looks like they're just looking for, to be a little too pretty when they just need to put their hard hats on and go to work.
True. I mean, of course, this power play has a lot of creative players, and some amount of puck movement is necessary, and I think is good and is healthy for a power play. What I don't like, though, is when you see grade A scoring chances passed up, and shots don't get through onto the net. Those are the two main gripes that I have. Is that a shot doesn't get through on the net, and you've got people passing up grade A choice choice scoring chances.
Speaking of grade A choice scoring chances, how about Tommy Wingles on the 3-on-1?
Yeah.
Oh my God! Just hearing that on the radio, I could totally visualize it.
Yeah, I think that was just paralysis because he had too many options.
Yeah,
he was thinking way too hard.
Yeah, it sounded like he just kind of cramped up and just collapsed.
I was looking for the 19 on the back of the jersey instead of 57. I won't lie.
Yeah.
Well, I've seen that before. I remember, I think it was either this year or last year. There was one time the opposing team had a 4-on-1 or something like that, and they just completely cramped up because it's like you have too many options almost. Yeah. So
and it's
not unprecedented.
No, for sure.
I also think that we've got a kid who his confidence isn't very high right now as far as scoring goes, and so he doesn't make a confident play. Instead, he tries to hold up and he tries to make the perfect play.
Yeah.
So I think that his lack of confidence definitely comes into the factor there, because he doesn't pass, he doesn't even shoot. He holds on to that puck, trying to make sure that puck gets into the net instead of just taking his shot when he's got the chance. So that was a little disappointing to see that rush and him not getting anything on net.
Well, really, I mean, if you're talking like a 2-on-1, you really have two options. You either pass it or you shoot it, and the only really variable there is when are you going to do each. Whereas if you have three guys, you're like, do I pass to him? Do I pass to him? When do I pass to him? And then by the time you've thought through all that, the defenseman sees any hesitation, they're going to take advantage of that. I mean, I actually think if that was Thornton, I think that would have probably ended up with a scoring play or a really good chance on net.
Probably.
He wouldn't have. I mean, Thornton will never hesitate to pass. He's okay, I can pass this one.
If you're not passing once on a 3-on-1, you better put that puck in the net, because you could create so many options just by getting the puck from one side to the middle, because you're already making the goalie move one way, and then if you can just do so much already because the defenseman's already made his move and the goalie's reacting. I mean, it just, every player is going to react differently, and maybe it was just the heat of the moment or something. I don't know, but he's young too. These are the type of games where this is where he's learning this type of stuff, and maybe next time when he's doing it, it's a big game and we need the 2 points, and he ends up scoring. I mean, Torrey Mitchell always had that one goal every year where he scored like a highlight reel goal in a game that really mattered. But then, like every other game during the season, he would like fan on shots or he'd lose his edge. But when these guys get their one time where it matters, they'll hopefully get it done because they've had these nights.
Their one shining moment, if you will.
Yeah.
The Nico Dimitrakos overtime goal. Patrick Rissmiller overtime against Nashville. We have some playoff heroes.
Yeah, one-hit wonders, as I like to call them.
I just think of
Andre Zuzin.
Torrey Mitchell, that time he wove through like 4 Canucks players, and then
yes, I remember that.
You guys remember that one? Where it was like over this side, back, and then four players, and then he dekes the goalie out, and boom.
Or against Anaheim, shorthanded breakaway, he gets taken out, he goes on his knees, comes back up, and scores backhand.
Yep, I remember that.
I remember that. Yep.
Yeah. It's funny because we always forget that even the fourth line player has a lot of skill in this league, and even the bruisers who we think are not very skillful at all, play in any kind of men's league and they'll school, anybody.
Oh yeah. No, I once played a pickup basketball game with a guy who played in college, was not, never drafted, not even that, good college-wise. He kicked everyone's asses. Like, he was just schooling everyone. Like, yeah, and I imagine hockey's just the same way. You play, you play against like even Mike Brown, who's not the greatest hockey player. He would probably school every single one of us on the ice and make us look like fools.
Are you guys familiar with Casey Wellman?
No.
He's from Mountain View. He signed with Minnesota as a free agent after his college season at UMass. He played hockey in the Bay Area, and he one of his second NHL game was against the Sharks. He got called up for Minnesota's playoff run. I used to play pickup with him in Dublin, and he used to come before he was at UMass because he was playing for Junior Sharks, and then he moved and stuff. And when he was at UMass, he was playing for them at the same time. There's this kid who was playing in the WHL for the Everett Silvertips, and they were out there, and they were on opposite teams, and they were going one-on-one at each other, and they were going pretty evenly. But the WHL kid never ended up making it because he was an all-star AAA player, but then he has to start out in the third line in the WHL where you're fighting. You get knocked out your first time. You want to get big so that doesn't happen to you. You stop focusing on your other skills, and you just get focused on this one thing, and you get hurt. And a lot of shit can happen when there's fighting involved. But college hockey, UMass, he didn't even get drafted. Their college season ended. They had a good season. He gets signed 2 days later, plays in the NHL, and then he comes back that next summer after playing in the NHL. And the amount of skill he had just from 2 years, from UMass to Minnesota, was unreal. This guy was beyond anybody on the rink double. It was unreal.
So for our radio listeners, radio listeners of the Shark, there was a question out there: why was Hedeken not doing radio duty with Rusanowski? And I can explain that. The Sharks put out a press release that they were going to do rotating colormen for the 25th anniversary. So this is planned. In that press release, we've got a list of Sharks who were going to do the radio coverage with Dan Rusanowski this year. So it's not that Hedeken's lost anything in his job or anything like that. No, this was planned from the beginning, and you don't have to worry about Hetty. He'll be back on full time next year.
Yeah, ever since he signed a deal, he had the amount of games per season worked out. Like, he's signed on to be the color guy there. They wouldn't bring him on for a couple. It's not like he did a Marty McSorley or anything like that. Hedeken's a Stanley Cup guy. Incredible hockey player. He's a good guy.
Oh, definitely.
Side today too, wasn't he? He was sitting with Brody, no?
He was in the studio, I believe, right?
Yeah, he was doing postgame.
Yeah.
In my opinion, I actually liked Hetty a little bit more than I liked Baker. I thought that Hetty had a little bit more insight than Jamie did, but of course, you can't really fault the Sharks for going with Baker. So
Baker put in the years and the time spent, I mean, it would have been kind of a I don't know. I mean, it wouldn't have been a bad decision by the Sharks on any means, but it would have been sort of it would have been something that was notable and like, oh, like he jumped over him. Like, how did that? You know, there would be questions asked, but they made the right decision at the end. Hedekin's great. He's going to end up doing color eventually, but this is how you got to start out.
Definitely.
And not even that. I think like for any criticism that Baker's get, I think whether it was Baker, whether it was Remenda, like whoever replaced Remenda was going to get serious flack.
Yeah, exactly. There was no way they were ever. I mean, they would have had to bring in someone who was ridiculously good to make anyone forget about Drew Remenda.
Right.
Every broadcaster has a different style, and nobody's going to be Drew. I mean, Baker wasn't a coach. Baker was a player. Drew Remenda was a coach. It's a very different mentality of the game, and when you're seeing it happen, you're like, Baker's not going to be ripping on players during a game as quickly as maybe Remenda would, because Remenda has that's instinct from a coaching experience. But where coming from the player point of view, like players just don't like really do that. But a coach can get a little bit more vocal. You could see that on all the post-game stuff too, like Don Cherry and stuff.
Oh, your lovable Uncle Don from north of the border.
Ugh.
Yeah, he's not afraid to say what he thinks.
Oh boy, some of the stuff is pretty funny, but other stuff just kind of makes me shake my head a little bit.
Yeah, it gets gimmicky after a while. I mean, you got to think about it. Hockey Night in Canada. Essentially, every family in Canada is watching it, and it's almost like how
It's by
any
law.
corporation thing is running, like Disney or ESPN. Like ESPN, just ever since they started firing all these guys for saying what they really think, they turned more and more into Disney. It looks like. So I don't know. It just seems like it seems that way in Canada at least. But for us American hockey fans, we think it's really cool to still watch it. So.
Isn't it operated by Rogers? Or I mean, I don't know Canada stuff that well. So.
I believe it's Rogers. Yeah, TSN.
Yeah, it is. It's Rogers.
Yeah. They originally it was CBC did the original broadcast, and then it was given to TSN, and then with the Rogers takeover, I think that they got the rights in the end, right?
Would you like the Canadian to explain it?
Yes.
Yeah,
All right,
let him explain his own culture, please.
I'm a dual citizen. I'm a Canadian citizen as well.
There you go. So here's what happened was CBC and TSN were the previous rights holder. The CBC obviously had the Saturday nights, and TSN had the Wednesday nights. When the new deal came up, because the contracts expired for television in Canada, what happened was initially everyone thought Rogers was going to get like a Sunday night national broadcast and everyone was going to stay put. But then Rogers just threw crazy amount of money down, and the NHL said, okay, cool. So what happened was, instead of, obviously, if you took Hockey Night in Canada off the air, people in Canada would freak out. So Rogers, I mean, it's still run by Rogers, and it's still their production. They kind of made changes. Obviously, that's why Ron McLean was moved and George Stroumboulopoulos was brought in. And, so that's basically the way it is. Everything is Rogers now. CBC, it's kind of CBC in name only at this point.
Yeah.
It's Monday Night Football up there.
Yeah, basically. Correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't they do Hockey Night in Canada out of the TSN studio before the Rogers? They never did that?
Nope.
Okay.
CBC. It was definitely out of the Studio 43, 42.
Okay.
I can't remember.
Yeah, so anyhow, I mean, Don Cherry talk, I mean, it's always funny. Especially, when he goes in front of his own parliament and he starts ranting about pinkos. But, I think going back to the game, it was a little interesting. You saw Burns almost hit the 30-minute mark tonight, which was pretty insane. Burns playing 30 minutes. He looked pretty good out there. He ended up being a -1 on the night that when O'Reilly scored. He was scoring on Burns. Of course, he was on the ice when Vlasic got his goal, but that doesn't count on the power play.
That could have to do with maybe just like a thought that the players might have maybe a little bit slower time back checking, and we need to have our faster defensemen out there. Maybe just because it is the second game of a back-to-back, you need to have your fast defensemen out there a lot more in that second half, because you got to just think that your players are going to be just at least a little bit slower in some areas, whether it's battling in the corners for back checking or just coming back on a 3-on-1.
True. Although with me, I always cringe when it's Burns on the back check because I never know what the hell he's gonna do. It seems like
he always
he's
does something bold. Something bold.
Yeah. I don't like the fact that he leaves his skates really often, though. That's the one gripe I think I have on his game, is that his tendency is to leave the skates early and really try and do that poke check or that.
Oh.
His patented belly flop.
He did one. I think he did one against Florida where he did it just perfectly. He did the stick with one hand behind the back, poke checked it right off the front of the stick. It was beautiful. But then when you miss on that, it's bad. So it's a real do or die move there. I mean, it's real risky. I mean, you could also get a penalty if you're not getting the puck first. But when you get it, it's beautiful.
Yeah. So as far as kind of rumors and news about the Sharks in the run-up, we've got an interesting tweet coming from Damian Cox. He's saying that looks like Dinas Zubaris likely to sign a PTO with San Jose. Now, if I screwed up that name, I would get scolded by my girlfriend because no, Dinas. Her uncle is named Dinas, and he's Lithuanian, and my girlfriend's Latvian, so they kind of share similar name structures. But anyhow, he's a 37-year-old forward coming from New Jersey Devils. Of course, Peter DeBoer had him. That's likely why he's trying out. It'd be interesting, though. I mean, maybe they don't have full confidence in Goldobin still. What do you guys think?
I think that has a lot to do with it, and I think that, you looked at tonight, Goldobin, I don't think he touched the ice in the third period after that, where he was just really kind of lazy on that play where, he lost the puck and didn't really turn around to deal with it quick, kind of floated around. And, so I think that has a big part to do with it, is that they're not, Goldobin, I've been impressed with Goldobin to a point. Like, I think he's impressed me to the point where, like, I was really, really sour on Goldobin in camp, and he's kind of turned me a little bit since he's come up and played a few games. But, he's not ready for the NHL yet still.
No, I totally agree. I think, if anything, you kind of want to let him simmer a little bit more in the AHL. You're starting to see Tierney start to display that kind of lack of confidence a little bit, and seems like he needs to go have a little bit of a conditioning stint in the AHL as well. Yeah. Defensively, he hasn't really. And I agree too. I think defensively his game is still pretty good, but it's that offensive side where, he starts to go back to his defensive game before anything else, which is a good thing because he's not getting scored on quite a lot, but he's also not being as creative as he was when he first came out of his first AHL stint.
I found it interesting though that they went to Tierney on the second line. They put Nieto up there first, and then by the end of the game, it was Tierney playing on the second line. I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah. Oh, I don't think Tierney's moving. I think he's staying up here, and I think he's just got to work through his struggles. But I do worry for Goldobin, and worrying that his development is stymied a little bit by coming up here and then being dropped back down and then calling back up. So it'll be interesting, but yeah, I think it has a lot to do with his play and why Zubaris would get a PTO.
So looking at the actual numbers, so he played 6 shifts in the first, 5 shifts in the second, and then in the third he played 0 shifts, as you mentioned already. Same thing with overtime. Marco Mueller actually also had a pretty big drop-off in amount of shifts. He had 7, 6, and then 2. Mike Brown had 5, 5, and 3. So looks like they were de-emphasizing the 6 defensemen and the bottom line towards the end there. I think partially it seems like he might have been in the doghouse a bit, but also I think they were trying to push a little harder towards the end there and rely more on their top guys to try and pull them through.
Well, yeah, I think
I mean, the third and fourth line, they get less and less minutes as the game goes on. That happens every game. The fourth line is lucky to get on the ice at all any game usually.
Yeah, I think the only reason why we point it out is because we look at those first 4 games where we had the tight structure. You had the really kind of dominant games outside the New Jersey game, and you were seeing that the ice times were very even, and that had been something that we hadn't seen the Sharks do in a very long time. And
we also were leading by more than 1 goal in some of those games. We had 2 or 3 goal leads. Like, if we're tied in a game, we're up by 1 goal, we're not going to play those guys. And we haven't had very many games since that first week where we've had a 2 or 3 goal lead.
True. But I did think that Peter DeBoer had more of just had more confidence in his lower lines early on in the season, where he would put a Tierney line against a second or a third line from whoever. Now it seems like he's sheltering a little bit more. He's picking and choosing where he wants to deploy people, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's something that you have to do, during the course of an 82-game season. But I do think that we're seeing a little bit of a regression by Tierney. And Mueller's game was okay. I didn't see him stand out.
I didn't really notice him at all, honestly. And maybe for Mirko Mueller, that's like the kind of thing you kind of want from him, because that's kind of the scouting report on him, right? He's kind of like Vlasic in the sense where he's gonna make a good first pass, and you're not really gonna overly notice all the little things he does. So maybe that's a good thing for him, but.
Yeah, what I saw of Mueller, he did seem to be pretty steady. I mean, they don't want to overexpose him early. Tierney does seem like he is coming around the last several games. I know for a while there he was really doing badly. I mean, he was struggling pretty hard for a while now. Last couple games I've seen him making more plays along the boards. I think he'll probably start moving in the right direction, because he had Mike Brown like numbers for a good stretch of 5 games there, and that's not good.
No, and on yesterday's
Brown and Lurg.
Yeah, in yesterday's game, he showed very good poise on Nieto's goal, really setting that up. So I do agree. I think he's coming out of it, but again, he's got to work on it up on this level versus, being in the AHL where he can dominate lower levels of talent there. But he's got to play up here with the big boys, and it's kind of good to see him back on the fourth line to be able to work on his game. Not necessarily that he's going to be a fourth liner, because he's not, but to see him work on his game on the fourth line and really start to take advantage of the lower levels of talent he's got to face. What about, so for me at least, it was a little surprising that we're looking at a PTO for a forward. What do you guys think about that? I mean,
I think it's just that DeBoer has experience with him, and it's a 10-day tryout. It's not a con. It's barely anything. It's just DeBoer giving the guy a look. If anything, it just could be it could be DeBoer just giving this guy just what, I'll give you a shot. I'll give you a look. It's just It's just him skating with the team a couple practices. If they like him, they're going to throw him on, maybe play some games, maybe he doesn't. It's just a in-case thing. If there's injuries that come along the next 10 days, maybe they have a guy that's hurt and they're trying to get more info. We don't know. Things could come out later, but it's nothing to really think about too deeply.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think it's a lot of ado about nothing. I mean, if we're talking about this again in 10 or 20 days, then maybe there's something there. But for now,
he just
I think
got released from St. Louis.
Yeah, it's probably more of just let's have a look at it. It's it's like when you see your football team make practice squad transactions. Really, it's not that much to pay attention to.
Mm-hmm.
It depends on. I guess I'm just curious, who's driving. If it's DeBoer that thinks that we need to take a look at the guy, or if it's Doug Wilson. I think that'd be the only thing that would be
probably some mixture of both.
Yeah, probably.
It's probably.
Go ahead.
When a player gets released, their agent is constantly looking for other opportunities for them. His agent's calling any person in the NHL that could have had any experience with Zubers in the past. He probably called DeBoer and said, "Look, he just got released. He's trying to show guys that he has something left in the tank. You've experienced him. You know his game. Give him a look. PTO, it's nothing for the team to do that. So that's mostly what it could be, and that he could." what could it hurt? He skates with us. If he's good, he helps the team out. If not, it doesn't hurt us where he walks away. It could be just that's mostly what he's doing. The agent's just trying to get him a tryout anywhere, and that's what this is.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that the Sharks have been pretty reserved when it comes to PTOs, though.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at
It's up to the coach, though. Really.
You look at the training camp, and we didn't have any PTOs, and now you've got a PTO 14 games into the season. That to me sounds like Doug Wilson's looking on the going dumpster diving here for a player. I don't know. That's just what it seems to me.
As of 5 days ago, though, he wasn't available.
Yeah, I don't know.
It might. I mean, it might be saying it might not. It's hard to say. I mean, we'll have a better idea in a week or so. Because I mean, if it comes and goes, then it was nothing probably. And these things pop up. So yeah, we'll see. I mean, I think if he was going dumpster diving, it'd probably be for a defenseman, any defenseman at this point.
And if it was clear, like within the first hour or day or two of practice that he's just not there, they're going to let him know, and he's going to leave, and that's going to be that, and that'll be it. But if he's going to have to impress some people to get a contract, and some major things would have to be happening, probably like injuries that we don't know about right now, which could be a possibility.
I just think it speaks to a lack of, like, if we're talking 10 days down the road and he is on the team, I think it just speaks to a lack of confidence in the Nikolai Goldobins. And obviously, I'm surprised that Gaudreau hasn't come back up yet, but, could you see a guy like Zubers on the fourth line? For sure.
I think you're just looking more at what he could bring to your team positively rather than what you're thinking about your team negatively if you're bringing him on. I think if they're thinking about bringing him on, they're having him try out, they're looking at what could he bring to this team to help it out, not that, we don't have confidence in our guy, we need to bring somebody from outside in. We're just seeing if there's anybody out there that can make us better.
Yeah, I agree. But you've also got to remember, too, that you've got Raffi Torres kind of waiting in the wings. We got, 26 more games left? No,
he's like halfway through.
Yeah, exactly, because we're game 17, and it's got 41 games, so it's quick math
back
here.
like
20.
He'll be back like right when Couture is back. It'll be right around the same time, probably right after New Year's.
Sooner than that.
Yeah. So we've got him coming back too. So you don't want to overstack the forwards because we had this problem before where you had guys who weren't able to get on the team and really. And
he hasn't even signed the PTO yet. He's likely to. So
yeah,
I mean, this could be just a rumor. Somebody's talk to somebody, oh yeah, we called him, he might be trying out, you never know, and then they post that, and now the whole Twitter world's talking about it, so it's nothing yet.
We live in the age of social media where nothing is a small story.
Sure.
So this game was also a pretty good milestone too for a very long tenured Shark. A Shark who came up through the organization, has played over 600 games now for the Sharks. You've got Joe Pavelski hitting point number 500. What do you guys think?
Surprisingly, also he did it more quickly than Patrick Marleau by about 100 games, which actually kind of surprised me. I never thought he was quite as prolific as Marleau was. I mean, I thought he was fit close, but it's actually pretty impressive. Although, I mean, he did have more time to simmer in his teenage and early 20s versus Marleau kind of jumping right in. But that was really cool to see. He's he's the other Mr. Shark. Like, Marleau is Mr. Shark, but Pavelski's the other Mr. Shark.
In all fairness, Pavelski had the privilege to play with a lot better players than Marleau did at the beginning of his career. You got to think about it. Marleau came in 96. We made the playoffs once in 99, and then against the Blues in 2000, 2001, and we weren't making the playoffs very frequently until we got Joe, which was 03, 04. So Patty Marleau didn't get the privilege of playing with all-star quality players. Like when Joe Thornton came along, he was beyond anybody that was even close, and Marleau was drafted one spot below him. I mean, that's how big of a difference 1 and 2 were that year. And Joe came, and he was instantly the greatest. And Pavs got to play with him. When Chichi was in his prime, scoring 56 goals, he was young and seeing all that. Mahalik, who was a first-round pick. I mean, Couture. I mean, he played with a lot better players.
Well, Pavelski also got a couple of extra years to also mature in the college ranks too, where
Marleau was thrown in there when he was 17.
Marleau came right from junior, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's a very cool milestone. Of course, you had Joe Thornton with his 1,300 game a couple games ago.
Mhm.
You've got Patty now sitting on what is it 998?
I think
998.
it's 998 as of that goal. Yeah. So in the next 2 games, probably we're talking about point that 1,000.
Where are they after Boston?
Let me pull
Philadelphia.
Philadelphia. Yep.
Philadelphia.
Yeah, Philadelphia, and
Philly.
then I believe after that it's the Penguins, and then the
I'm
Blue
going to
Jackets.
Oh,
say he does it in Philly.
Yeah, probably in Philly.
That Boston
I
game's
expect
gonna
by the end of this road trip we see it. I would be surprised if it wasn't by the end of the road trip.
That
Yeah.
Boston game is going to be a fun game to watch.
Yeah, it's gonna be a good game to watch. I just worry that you're gonna see the drop off though because of these back to backs, and you've got a 3-game and 4-night situation. Because
Nah, there's a feeling when you play the Bruins that you're going to go in there for a battle. I mean, they bring a physical game no matter when you play them, and I think they're going to go, and I think they're going to have a hot start, and I think that they're going to maybe blow their fuse a little too soon. I think they're going to come out hot against the Bruins. Especially after this overtime, these guys are juiced. These guys are on the plane. They're actually happy. They haven't been in this mode yet this season. I mean, they're probably at the highest peak that they've had at any point this season. Even after that first week, I mean, tonight was such a big win, and for Marlowe to get that goal, that's big for a locker room.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'd agree. We've got Slushy Jake chiming in. When Pavelski came up, the lines were Greer, Marlowe, Pavelski. So that's a pretty good line to start your career off with.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, what I was saying earlier, that wasn't meant as a dig at Marlowe. It was more just I was actually surprised 'cause I didn't realize that. But then again, the beginning of Marlowe's career was a long time ago. That was in hockey terms. That's 18 years is a long time.
He's an elder statesman for sure. So, I mean, I think for me at least, Pavelski's number's a lock to go up. But I think it's Pavelski, and you've got Marlowe, of course, and I think you've got Thornton. I think those three, when they retire, I think they'll all go up. What do you guys think?
Definitely, I'm pretty sure. I know for sure Marlowe will be up there, and like if they don't do Thornton up there, I'll be pretty pissed off. I know they've tried to distance themselves from him a little bit, but they all three should be up there eventually.
I think Nolan should be up there then too.
Agreed.
Oh yeah, no, there's no doubt in my mind no one should be up there.
He was the first captain that fans really had a connection with.
I think for me at least, Thornton has been a little bit more prolific than Owen Nolan was, and I love Buster. I loved his game. I loved the heart that he brought. But just from a statistic and from a prolific scoring point, I think Thornton kind of eclipses Owen Nolan in my mind. But Owen Nolan is definitely a sentimental kind of choice to put up there.
I think Thornton's number goes up there if he wins a cup. I think Marlowe and Nolan are guys that would get put up there because we drafted them. Thornton, he did do so many great things for this franchise that we wouldn't have had the opportunity to do without him. But I think we need to get a cup for his number to get up there other than Nolan and Marlowe. Because if you're putting Marlowe up there, I think Nolan's going to want to go up there. And he's an alumni guy. You want to keep this guy around. You want to keep him around your rink. You don't want him being in bad feelings or having any negative thoughts. He played for other clubs. He could very well just claim other teams if he wanted to. But, he's loyal to this team. And I think you need to honor him and being the first big captain for this team.
Yeah,
well,
Nolan and Thornton will both be remembered primarily as Sharks, even if they, even if Thornton goes somewhere else after this, they're both remembered as Sharks. I think they'll both end up in there. They should, because Thornton. I mean, is there a better playmaker this generation? Decade in the last. Is there really a single better playmaker?
Yager's arguable. Yager's arguable, but he was a goal scorer. But Thornton has played it too.
I think the main thing for me is that Thornton will enter the Hall of Fame as a Shark, wearing the Shark crest. And so if you don't have his number hanging in the rafters, even if he doesn't win a cup, but he's in the Hall of Fame, I think that's a very big mistake. We've got Slushy Jake chiming in on this question as well. Where do you guys think Joe Pavelski ends his career as far as points goes? Do you think he's eligible for the Hall of Fame, or do you think he's just kind of too old and hasn't?
It's way too soon. It's way too soon to say something like that. I think like a realistic, I think he could get between Marleau and Thornton on all-time career points. I don't think he's going to get more points at Thornton. If Thornton was getting seasons where he was getting 90 plus, 100 plus a couple times in his career, I don't think Pavelski's going to do that in the NHL this day. But I think he can get somewhere between Marleau and Thornton.
Realistically, I don't think Pavelski actually ever eclipses 1,000 because he's almost 31.
Yeah.
The part of him, he marinated early in college and all that, which is good, helped him later on in his career, but it also meant the clock was ticking early. So I would guess maybe 800 to 900 points. That'd be assuming a couple more really strong seasons, and then in his mid to late 30s he kind of tails off a bit. I think that's a realistic expectation. I don't think he'll. Never say never, but I think just based on the numbers, I don't see a way he surpasses 1,000 without just going crazy for several great years.
Yeah, I agree.
At best, he scores like 80 points for the next 3-4 years, right? Like average.
No, I think that's way too high. I think he's probably more of a 70.
Yeah, you figure 60 to 70. That would get you 60 to 70 for like 3 or 4 years, or maybe 5 years even. That would get you up around 800, and then you have it drop off a little bit. Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying you can't. I'm saying though, if you just look kind of averages, and also you figure Thornton's going to be going away probably in a few years. He's going to not have that playmaker because, that's part of what's helped his point production a lot is playing with Thornton. His point production's gone way up. So I think realistically, I don't see him surpassing 900. Or not impossible, but not by much.
Yeah, I agree. I think 900 to me is the sweet spot for where Pavelski ends his career. Which is very good. No, very good for a college hockey player. I mean, because we think about it.
Round, right? Seventh round
too. Yeah. So there's no shame in him only hitting 900
there's
as a
no
college hockey player, 7th rounder.
Play a game in the NHL.
Right, and I think he'll end up in the U.S. Hockey Hall of Fame, if anything. Just because there hasn't been a lot of U.S. prolific kind of players, but you look at his point production being a college player, and that would rank him pretty high.
Won a national championship.
Won a national championship. He's very successful at every level. He won a USHL championship as well.
Silver medal.
Silver medal. Yeah, he'll definitely be a U.S. Hockey Hall of Famer, but for the overall Hall of Fame, I think it's kind of a stretch. What about Marleau? What do you guys think about Marleau in the Hall of Fame?
I'd say the bubble. Pretty good chance. He's kind of on the bubble. If he continues to have if he wins a cup, or if he has another, I don't think it's impossible for him to have another 5 years of pretty good production because he's still pretty fast. It's not impossible.
Like, is JR going to the Hall of Fame? Like, as good of a career as he had, he didn't win a cup. Is he going to go to the Hall? That's hard to say. So if JR isn't going to the Hall of Fame, I don't think Marleau should go in the Hall of Fame because JR in his prime was one of the most electrifying scorers with Keith Tkachuk in the NHL.
But see, this is where everybody has to remember that the Hall of Fame is not only a points and not only a kind of what you've done in the playoffs kind of scenario or what you've done for your country, but it's also a very political game. And you look at JR and how many people he's stepped on, how many egos he's bruised. I don't see JR getting in because he's burnt so many bridges.
But JR also has turned so many people onto the sport with his personality and his attitude.
In the U.S. But you got to remember
that's where they need hockey to grow because Canada's in law. Canada's going to be hockey fans no matter what.
Canada's going to be there no matter what.
I'm not arguing that.
JR is a great spokesman. I know people like JR. JR is the Charles Barkley of the NHL. That's what he is, and the NHL wants to ride him as long as possible because he's not afraid to say what he thinks also, and that's good for them too because Milbury's up there sometimes talking nonsense,
But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the 8 or 9 or 10 player or executive panel that the Canadian, that's predominantly Canadian. And JR has burnt so many bridges that I don't see him getting put into the ballot unless you have some extraordinary circumstance that gets him in.
Somewhat extreme comparison, but think of Terrell Owens in the NFL. part of the reason, I mean, by all his numbers, he's a Hall of Famer. He's absolutely a Hall of Famer, but he's probably not going to get in if at all, if not for a while, because a lot of people don't like him. And
yeah, it's like Barry Bonds. It's like Barry Bonds.
Barry Bonds is a little different because of the whole.
I have a good like
to an extent,
hockey
yes.
analogy here. I mean, look how long it took Pat Burns to get into the Hall of Fame, and that was because of grudges that were held against him on the panel, because politics is a big thing in the in the Hockey Hall of Fame. So I think
which is ridiculous.
It is, but I mean that's fact.
If you think about it, if guys are not getting into the Hall of Fame because you don't like them, like you wouldn't care about a guy who's talking crap about your country, who's some guy who just isn't a good player. But the fact that Jeremy Roenick is the second highest American scorer in the history of the NHL, and he's saying stuff about that, and then they don't like him because of that. I mean, it's because he has an impact. I mean, he has such a great image for this sport just in general, and in Canada too. Like, as many bridges as he might have burned later in his career, that stuff should not matter now because he played his career the way he did, and you need to look at his play on the ice and how much he affected the game when he was on the ice. And he was dynamic. Even when he was on the Sharks, he had some moments where he just was the controlling play of the whole game, and he just
I don't think anyone's disputing his credentials. I think part of the thing though is this is kind of the way the world works, and a lot of people won't necessarily think to themselves like, I'm not putting him in because I don't like him. They will look at his stuff and they will try to find fault with it just because there's that bias in the back of their head. They will try, okay, here's the reasons why I don't want to. It's common. I mean, we see it every day. Always people like, you can tell when someone already has a thing in the back of their head. They may not say it outright, but like they don't want to do something. Therefore, they nitpick every last thing. Like, oh, I don't like that. I don't like that. And they're dancing around the fact that they don't want to just admit, I don't like that person.
Yeah, right. in my opinion, I think that Marleau has a better shot of getting into the Hall of Fame at the end of his career than Roenick does, on the sheer fact that Roenick burnt a lot of bridges, and I don't think Marleau has gone to bat for his country whenever they have asked. He's won 2 gold medals. He's going to have 1,000 points. Played 1,300 games over 1,200 games for a single team, and so I think that those are bubble. Those are definitely bubble statistics. But I also think that he doesn't have the black mark against him that Roenick has. That's why I would say he has better shot.
Doesn't he, though? I mean, Marleau, you want to go to the Canadian media. I mean, a lot of Canadian media on Marleau still is, even though the points per game in the playoffs don't back it up, a lot of the perception is, Marleau's just never there when you need him, right?
Yeah, but you look at his points during the playoffs.
But the overall, the Sharks fans know how big of goals he's had, how big of games he's had, but the overall consensus of the NHL media, which is primarily East Coast and Canada, they don't see that. They look at the numbers, they look at the stats. They're not watching these games. They're looking at box scores. They're not watching highlights of these games. They're not. It's the truth. They're looking at box scores. They're looking at stats. They're looking at their stats at the end of the year. They're saying, oh, Marleau had a good year. They're not looking at his game-to-game basis, whether he had a 10-game drought, whether he scored a hat trick 5 times. They're looking at numbers at the end of the year.
Yeah, I don't know. To me, I guess I just have more of a conspiracy theory on the Canadian panels that go up, that go up and put people in. But that's
sneaky Canadians.
Well, so like for instance, Marian Hossa, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think for most people, Marian Hossa is a Hall of Famer. No, you don't think Marian Hossa is a Hall of Famer?
No.
Well, I think the media disagrees with you, because
I don't think he never I don't think he was ever the most feared player while he was on the ice. Honestly, I think there was always somebody on the ice that was as good or maybe a little bit better than him. He never was the focus. He never was the driving force that led a team to a huge season. Like, he was a playing part. He's not he's an all-star. He's not a superstar.
What are you going to say, Ian?
I just say Host is an interesting one. I don't think he's even in the top 100 for points in the in the league.
I think he is.
I don't even.
He's over 1,000 points in his career. He also has multiple cups. I would think
Let me see here.
I would think he has a decent chance. I mean, it's hard to say. I guess you'd have to look at similar cases. I mean, that's what I always do whenever I'm trying to figure these things out. Like look at similar numbers. So
Yeah.
There's not that many European guys in the Hall, and you got to compare them to other guys that are in there. And some of these guys that have the old school consensus, they're not favorable to that. I don't know. I don't see him as Hall of Fame worthy, to be honest.
So, but this is my argument.
Sorry, it's 66. My bad.
So my argument is, if Hossa gets in, I think Marleau should get in, because I think that they're very similar players, and I think besides the cup, I think that you can draw a pretty good line. They're both very good two-way forwards. Marleau's got more games than Hossa does, and Marleau's nipping on his heel for
I
points.
just care about Marleau winning a cup, and if he does, I hope he makes it to the Hall of Fame. If he doesn't win a cup, golly, I hope he goes to the Hall of Fame. If not, darn. I mean, honestly, if we don't win a cup, it doesn't matter. I mean,
yeah, the only guy I can think of here we talked about that, Thornton.
Either way,
Thornton is the only one I'd say it'd be a tragedy if he didn't get in the Hall of Fame.
Thornton's first ballot.
He should be. Yeah, I mean, if anyone holds the whole cup thing if he retires without a cup and people hold that against him, it's bullshit, because he is hands down one of the best players of the last 20 years. So
yeah,
he's second in active players right now for point total.
Yeah,
I mean, Ray Bourque wouldn't have won a cup if he didn't go to an All-Star team.
Ray Bourque's still Hall of Fame defenseman.
Yeah.
I mean, for honestly, I mean, so that would be like saying, oh yeah, he didn't win a cup, so he shouldn't go to the Hall when he's one of the greatest defensemen of all time. He was arguably top 10 center of all time.
Just to hit the tweets here quick, Generation X-Wing just with a couple tweets. He said, how long did it take Housley to get in? Look at his numbers, which were good. And then, for you, Landy, what media thinks Hossa's a Hall of Famer? He's a slow year inductee.
Oh, I know you listened to Merrick versus Rosinski, and you know that they had that whole little debate about whether or not Hossa was going in. And
they're huge Chicago guys, though. They're huge Chicago guys.
Yeah, but still,
really?
I think Hossa's a good two-way forward. I don't think he gets enough credit, especially when it comes to Selke voting. I think he should be up there too.
Datsuk's better in every way.
Oh, I'm not saying that Datsuk's not better. I love Datsuk.
But that's who I know. But just like European players comparing wise, I think Hall of Fame worthy. I just don't see Hossa in there. I could name probably 10 European players that I would.
I mean, I agree with Randall in the fact that Hossa's never been the guy. Like, he's always been the second piece on the team. So I kind of get that argument for his Hall of Fame induction, where he's always been that second tier of guy on whatever team he's been on that's been a winner, right?
I mean, there's nothing wrong with that either. I mean,
player in the league at the time too, though.
Mm-hmm.
How many guys from those Oilers teams that Gretzky was on are in the Hall of Fame? I mean, they were those guys at some point too, and obviously they're Hall of Fame worthy. But I just don't see Hossa being just. Thinking of other guys that are in the Hall of Fame, I just couldn't put him on the same level. Just looking at this year's class,
I don't know.
I just wouldn't put him in that same category.
But do you think Datsuk? Do you think Datsuk's a Hall of Famer?
150%. He's
Easily.
the most respected player in the NHL. Every player. I mean,
but Hossa's got more points than Pavel does,
Oh,
and
I don't
Hossa's
know.
played
I
more
don't
games.
Datsuk, when he's on the ice, I don't care. 2 years ago when Datsuk's in his prime with no injuries, I don't care if Crosby's on the ice or Ovechkin. He was the most feared and most dangerous player on the ice. I mean, just that one goal he scored against the Sharks where it looked like they were dead and out of the game, out of the series, and he scored that backhander from the far hash marks on the far side of the circle. Impossible angle. That doesn't happen. Great players don't score that goal. I mean, he's arguably the greatest Russian hockey player of all time.
I'm not denying the skill, and don't. I mean, I love Pavel Datsuk.
I'm just trying to express how I think he's one of the greatest of all time. Because he was the most respected by every player in the NHL. Every player in the NHL is saying he's number 1 or 2 at that any given time, and they all respected his game.
Well, and his greatness went more beyond just being a prolific scorer. Like, he was just known. It was bigger than one thing.
amongst the guys in the locker room, every guy had the respect for him. There wasn't any young rookie that was going after him. He was the most respected player because of his skills and what he did on the ice, and because he wasn't a dick about it.
But Hosa's never been that. Hosa's been a good
No,
guy.
but Holmes has never been Datsuk. Never.
But it doesn't matter. If you're looking at pure statistics, Hosa's got more points. Hosa's got
I just
same
don't
amount
see
of
it.
cups.
I know, but I just
Actually, more
personally,
cups.
I just don't feel he's a Hall of Fame worthy player. Just to be honest, there's a lot of guys who've won a lot of cups that are in the Hall of Fame.
I think both of them are going to be or should be in the Hall of Fame. Definitely Datsuk, though, because his greatness extends beyond just numbers. Like he is a freaking magician. Like just like there was some years there watching him, like you could see you were watching greatness. Like you knew he was the best player on the ice. I mean, you remember we did the Logan Couture, like they could not stop mentioning that in the broadcast last night on the Red Wings broadcast about the way Datsuk crossed up Couture, because that was.
Couture's not a bad defensive player.
Yeah.
Couture's a great defensive player, and he made him look like a silly little kid out there.
And he's not the first, and he won't be the last.
Yeah, when that happened, I wasn't even mad. I was just like, respect. That was shit.
You look at Datsuk, he has 2 of those shootout goals where he has the puck on his string, and Thornton later recreated that goal in his shootout where he just pulls it back. And he just glides, and the goalie just starts going to the other side of the net, and he just has the entire net wide open, and he just taps it in. I mean,
okay, all right. So what about Eric Lindros? Do you guys think that Lindros should be in?
No.
No. Okay, and Pavel barely
all started when he got drafted. It goes back to that.
But Pavel
He disrespected.
Pavel's got only a few more points than Lindros does, if Pavel ended his career now.
Lindros told the league he didn't care how they ran. He didn't care about a draft system. He didn't want to play for a team, so he didn't want to play for them. And the league still holds resentment to that. Granted, it helped a lot of franchises, but he didn't play that right at all, and it instantly gave him a bad image regarding that. I mean, he has a good image in Canada hockey. I mean, granted, he does, but I don't know. Just during his time, in his era, there were so many other players that were as good, if not better than him, that it's hard to say he's a Hall of Fame player. Yeah, he has the numbers. There was a lot more goals back then. But didn't.
I don't know if I'd say like he wasn't. He was good. Like, don't get me wrong. Lindros was a dominant player when he was playing. The problem is it's not like, to me, putting Lindros in is kind of like, it's not the Hall of what could have been. It's his career wasn't. He wasn't. I mean, he was dominant for a short time, but then he got hurt, and probably if he had a more healthy career, he might have been a surefire Hall of Famer. I just don't think that there was enough time where he was dominant to be in the Hall of Fame. And I hate Eric Lindros.
It needs to stay selective. You don't want too many guys getting in it.
I hate that argument. I really do, because
you need to keep it good.
No, look at the Baseball Hall of Fame, and look how many inductees they have, and look who's in it. Those are all names that need to be there, and they have way more guys than.
I'm talking about years like this year, though. The years they had, the amount of guys that they had this year, it's perfect like that. And I'm saying I don't see Hossa getting in on ballots with that amount of guys, with guys that are in the league now, or guys that are going to be retiring after him, or guys that are going to be trying before him. I think there's way more players that are as good as him, if not better than him, in this league right now.
Well, timing of retirement is also a big thing, as we've seen in other sports. If it depends on when you retire. If you retire in the correct year, where you just happen to land on a slow year, you might be a borderliner, but you get in first ballot because, I mean, look at Tim Brown in the NFL. Like, Tim Brown probably should have gone in first ballot, but he went up against some strong classes and didn't get in until a couple years through. So.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, you guys have anything else that you guys want to talk about? Get off your chest before we close this thing out.
I mean, I'm pretty beat after this doubleheader myself.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think after this whole season, I think that this has been a good turning around point, and I hope that it just starts to continue to go upwards. I mean, I'm kind of holding my breath at this point, because it still seems like the defensive mistakes are there. It just seems like the goaltending is just carrying them through a little bit better than it was before.
We still
So
have 4 games on this roadie. We gotta just go one game at a time on this road trip and hopefully come out over 500. I think.
Yeah,
agreed.
they at least need to break even, preferably a little bit above, because
4-2
these
would be
road
nice.
trips are
I would be okay
pretty
with 4-2.
tough.
4-2 would be great for a 6-game East Coast roadie
all right,
with Couture out.
Slushy Jake is gonna freak out if I don't ask this question. He's asking, what are your favorite overtime winners in the playoffs?
Sharks or NHL?
Sharks.
Oh, Sharks goals in overtime.
It was the other night I said it was Devin Setaguchi's goal. I mean, just 2 years in a row going up 3-0 on Detroit, and then that was the hat trick in Detroit. Detroit's GMs are just like stunned, and the Joe Lou 2 years in a row, like the Sharks, because they had just handled us. That was great. I listened out on the radio too. I started freaking out, honking my horn, swerving all over the place.
Ian?
Oh, you know, it's bothering me because I can't remember who scored the goal, but it was like the first time we played Calgary before Detroit rolled us over.
Oh, so
I remember
Thornton.
Game 7.
Thornton.
No,
Oh, no,
I'm talking back
Ray
the
Whitney.
year.
Ray Whitney.
Yeah. Was it?
So the year after Jamie Baker's goal.
Yes. I'm trying to remember
Ray
who scored
Whitney.
the goal. Ray Whitney, you're
Ray
right.
Whitney.
Absolutely. Couldn't remember if it was Ray Whitney or my brain's much.
That was only the second overtime winner.
Yeah.
That was only the second overtime winner in Sharks history.
Yeah. I remember that.
That's
That's the one. That's the one that always stands out. And I can't believe I didn't remember it was Whitney that scored it. But
Chris?
yeah, I still remember. I still remember seeing the goal. I just can't see the number on the back.
Chris?
For me, I mentioned this last night. It was Thornton and Marlowe against Detroit, Game 3, 2010. That 2-on-1. That basically that was the moment when you were like, "Holy shit, we might actually win the series."
Yeah. Mine was definitely the jumbo slide where he gets the OT winner against the LA Kings, and then he just slides on LA Kings ice, and he just does not give a flying fuck about what anybody thinks, and it was pretty hilarious.
Honorable mention to Setaguchi in the historic comeback against LA that series as well.
Yep, that would be my second choice.
Yeah.
Good choice.
All right, guys. Well, if there's nothing else, I think we're gonna end it on a good note. So we got the Sharks with a 2-game winning streak. They're back in the playoffs right now. We've got Boston coming up. We kind of highlighted that a little bit.
Boston.
And then
Boston.
we got.
We're going to the TD Garden. We're going to see the Bruins. They're going to play the Sharks. It's Jabba Joe coming back.
Get in the car. Get the kids in the car. Let's go.
The Celtics are crap this year. Let's hope the Bruins can make it to the playoffs. Chris Kelly already broke his leg.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for tuning in. If you haven't already, please use the subscribe button below. You can go ahead and give us a shout out at our Twitter handles that we've got at the beginning of the game. I can throw that up one more time for everybody. Yeah, and go Sharks, and let's just make sure we keep this happy train rolling. All right, guys, have a good night.